I'm going to be doing a card today featuring the Lisa Horton Year in Bloom Peonies May embossing folder and her interference and metallic inks so you can see the difference between them. So what I'm going to do with this is I'm actually starting out with two pieces of Spellbinders cardstock. I've got Forest and Barely Peach, and they're both cut down to 2 inches by 5¼ inches so that put together they're going to make a nice card mat that leaves a border around our standard A2 card front. And to make this easier to work with, I've got just a sheet of copy paper, just plain printer paper, and I'm actually going to just use a little bit of tape runner to tape these down so that we can work with them as one piece instead of having to do 2 separate pieces. I'm just going to tape that down. If I don't get it perfectly aligned, I can just trim off any printer paper that sticks out. It'll be fine. So I'm going to line both of those up. And then I'm just going to place this into my folder, and the words are going to face up when I run this through, since I have a right side with my colored paper. And I'm just going to line it up in the middle. You could line it up wherever you wanted to. And I'm just going to run this through my die cut machine. All right. And here we have that gorgeous embossing with both colors, which this is really fun even as it is. If you just popped it on a nice background, put a nice sentiment on it. But we're going to take the time today to look at the difference between her interference inks and her metallic inks and what they look like on both dark and light cardstock colors. I'm going to peel off the cover for my sticky mat. It's just the waffle flower sticky mat, and put my paper down just so that it holds it tight while we're doing our ink blending. And for our interference ink today, I've got the Sweet Treat Shimmer color. And for the interference inks, you want to make sure you don't use your normal blending brushes with these. You want to use a dedicated brush, either a brush or the little Tim Holtz Ranger mini blending foams work beautifully. And I'm just going to add ink to the middle of my flowers. So the color on the left-hand side is going to show us the color when you're on white or light colored cardstock. And the color on the right is going to show us what it's going to bring out on a dark green or a dark blue or a black cardstock. So I'm just going to focus on the middle of the flowers. I'm just going to kind of go in a circle. I'm going to get these gorgeous yellow flowers on the light colored cardstock. And I'm not worried about doing too perfect of a job. I just want to make sure that I'm trying to stay on the embossed portion and not too much dropping down into the gap areas. And then when I bring that exact same color over and onto the green, you'll see it's starting to pick up this purpley orange color, and it will turn a little bit more of that purple pink as it dries as well. That color will change just a little bit when it dries. And that's the interference property of the pigment ink. And on this embossing folder, this main flower is very large and absolutely gorgeous. Just touch up areas that I think maybe need a little bit more. And what you may not be able to see at the moment is there is a shimmer that comes along with these colors, but you can't really see that shimmer as well until it dries, especially in the light. I think you can see it a little bit here on this dark color. So that's the interference ink from Lisa Horton for the Sweet Treat Shimmer. And then her metallic inks are just a pigment metallic. So this is going to be the same color whether you're doing it on a light or a dark, but it will show up on both since it's a pigment ink. So I'm just going to use a green of the foam And this time I'm just gonna try to keep it on the leaves. This is not gonna be perfect by any means. There you can see I've got a little bit on the flower, but when it's done, it's really not that noticeable. And I think it's still a really fun look. If you had one of the tiny foam blending double-ended tools, you could use something like this. Or if you had one of the Spellbinder's tiny brushes, you could do one like this. I just don't have any that are dedicated for metallic inks, and I don't want to mix them in to alter them with my other inks. So I'm going to take a moment and just go over all the leaves. And you can't see it as much changing on this dark green color, but what I think you can probably see from the light is that you get that beautiful shimmer because we are putting green on green. So there's not too much of a tonal change there. And then in a perfect world, I would actually either leave this for quite a while or I would heat set it in order to make sure that it's completely dry before I continue on with the next step. So I'm actually going to pause and do that right now. My panel is dried, so now we're going to build it into a card. So I've got a piece of black cardstock, and this was cut to an A2 card size, and then I've trimmed just 1/8 of an inch around the corners so that we'll have a nice mat for our piece here. And remember, this is just copy paper holding the two together on the back. And you can use tape here, or you can use glue if you wanted to pop it up. You could use foam tape. I'm just gonna center this on my trimmed frame. So when you're working with these 3D embossing folders, sometimes the edges do seem to come a little bit out of square because of the depth of the embossing. And if that happens, you can just trim the edges to get them squared up if you need to. And then I've got a A2 card base, so 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 folded out of the same barely peachy color that we used for 1/2 of our embossed panel. I'm just gonna add my glue and add this piece down to the center. Give us that nice little bordered edge around. There we go. And then I've got a sentiment here. This is one of the Spellbinder's Better Press sentiments that says dance like no one is watching, that I've foiled, but you could use any sentiment you wanted for this. And again, if you wanted to use foam tape to pop this up, you could. And I'm going to choose to put this down in my bottom corner on my dark green color. And there we've got our finished card. You could add some pearls to this or some bling if you wanted to give it dimension. But if you wanted to keep it flat for mailing, just like this, and you can see here that shine, and we've used that same interference ink for both our yellow and our purple. And I don't think the camera is picking up the shine on that yellow very much, but you can really, I think, see it on the purple. So that's the Lisa Horton interference ink in the Sweet Treat color, and then the metallic pigment ink in Verdigris.